The big result for the Republicans is that Donald Trump has righted his campaign. A lot of people thought that losing in Iowa would be the end of his campaign, an existential blow to it. That's clearly not the case anymore. He's won in New Hampshire. He's won by a wide margin. He's probably going to stay in this. He's probably going to do very well in South Carolina. And then the question for the rest of the Republican Party becomes, is there anyone who can stop him? Right now, Trump doesn't have the kind of support you expect a presidential nominee to have from elected officials and other party leaders. But there are so many other candidates, and they're all doing kind of okay tonight. And so you have the non-Trump vote is very divided. And until that stops being the case, I think Trump's in a pretty good position. I think that's the big question for the Clinton campaign. They need to decide somehow if this was simply a geographic and demographic fluke, that it was a state right next door to Bernie Sanders' home state, with an all-white population virtually, with a Democratic Party where the activists tend to be very liberal and very young. The other alternative is that Sanders was doing something unique here that he can do in Nevada, that he can do in South Carolina, where even if he doesn't win, he can do very well, he can rack up delegates. And if that's the case, I think the Clinton campaign needs to evaluate whether the problem was something with their message, something with their campaign, something with their candidate, or whether there was something about the Sanders campaign that they need to replicate and haven't been able to yet. In a lot of ways, this reminds me of stories you heard about the 1968 race, where in the spring of that year, you found a lot of voters who said their first choice for president was George Wallace, and their second choice for president was Bobby Kennedy, or vice versa. And those are two candidates who, on the face of it, couldn't be further apart from each other, but what they had in common was that they were running on really strong change platforms, running on the idea that the system was rigged, that the people that they were talking to were being left out of the process, being intentionally harmed by the process, couldn't get ahead, couldn't win, couldn't get a fair shake. And I think you might be seeing a similar dynamic. I think there are a lot of people who look at Donald Trump and look at Bernie Sanders and see people who want to shake things up, who are willing to say, hey, the system is rigged, there's something wrong with it, and you're suffering as a result of it, and somebody else is doing better than you because of it. Now, these are two candidates offering very different policy prescriptions, very different recommendations for what to be done. They're placing the blame differently. But if you're a voter who just thinks that things could be better, I think either candidate could appeal to you on some level.